Hey guys, it's Catherine, and I wanted to kind of make a video about something that I've been wanting to talk to you guys about. Um, to be completely honest with you, I've always been very thankful that I was never on YouTube for any of my coming out moments. I've been on YouTube since I was 15 years old, but I've never been part of the whole coming out thing on YouTube. I have a lot of feelings about that, and I never thought that I would make a video like this, but there's been some changes in my life recently that I've honestly wanted to share with you guys, mostly because I am the sort of person who it's really hard for me to just not talk about something, It's really, really, really hard for me to just not talk about certain things. And I've noticed that when I talk about my life now, that there are things that some people are a little confused about, and I just wanted to sort of make this video to talk about it because I've been doing this for over 10 years, and I just have a habit of wanting to come to you guys and share with you guys about all the things that are going on in my life. So as a lot of you guys know, or should know by now, if you've been following me on social media, well, I guess I'm going to assume most people actually don't know this because you guys probably don't follow me beyond YouTube, but if you do, you know that I am currently single. I was in a relationship for the past 5 years of my life, and for the most part, it was a really good relationship. It was a relationship that started really, really fast. It was a relationship that was very much, we met, we got along, we were both in really shitty situations, and together we really sort of started to, make each other better people. We grew. It was for 5 years. I started dating him when I was 21 years old. I'm 27 now. There was a lot of stuff that, I leaned on him for and he leaned on me for. We worked as a couple and as a complement to each other for a really long time. And, that was how our relationship worked, right? And I'm not going to ever really go in depth about why the breakup happened and why things are the way they are. But I will say that it was my decision. It was my decision, and it really was my decision because I just kind of realized that if I was being honest with myself, there were some things I needed to sort out that would not be able to be sorted out when I was with him. And to explain that to you guys, because this is really the overarching conversation, not only in this video, but honestly, from this point forward, is going to be a big conversation on this channel. I've kind of had this problem through my life where I'm very concerned with, and this is a very natural thing, I'm very concerned with how I seem, right? What my image is. Now, I'm gonna say that in this specific situation, this is not everywhere, especially when it comes to my politics. I'm less concerned with how people see me. But, when you are, first of all, I grew up as one of the only black kids in my area, right? And so almost immediately from day one, I was faced with all of these expectations of who I was supposed to be. All of these, sort of racist and anti-black things that were sort of projected onto me, that because of where I was and because I was one of the only people, I was like, well, I've got to work really hard to make sure that this isn't the case, to make sure that I don't seem like that, right? As a trans person, I dealt with the same thing, right? I became very concerned with seeming like your typical trans story of a woman who was hypersexualized, who was an escort, who was all this different stuff. And, so I worked really hard to sort of form a very respectable image of myself, right? Now, some of you guys who have been following me for years, I'm going to shout out Matica, John, why is her name escape? Corey. Some of you guys have been following me for a very, very long time, and you remember and you saw this change in me where I used to come on YouTube and I was a very kind of raw, sometimes ratchet person. And then you kind of saw me change, not only after my relationship, but leading up to that point, because a lot of you guys don't remember, or maybe you don't know my story, but when I was in college, right, my goal going outside of, leaving college was to be stealth, right? And being stealth, basically, for those of you guys who don't know, basically means you're living in a situation where the people around you do not know that you're transgender, right? And so an important part of that, honestly, was seeming respectable, was not calling attention to yourself, was being someone who could blend in with every other woman, right? And, a lot of that was informed by maybe some ideas that I had that were maybe a little misogynistic. This idea of not being able to have access to sex, not being able to be hypersexual if you wanted to be. A lot of these sort of things that made it so that when I got to the point when I met my ex, I wanted nothing more than to be normal, right? I wanted nothing more than to seem like I was just every other person, right? And so when it came to me really being able to have an honest conversation with myself about who I was, where I was going, how I felt, that was always really hard, because at a certain point, especially when I got into a relationship and I now had to worry about his friends and family and all that stuff, what I did and who I was not predicated on me. It was all predicated on him. I tried really hard to be a good girlfriend who seemed like an amazing catch, who, was all these things. And it's not that, I wasn't all of those things, but I started to moderate my image in a way that really didn't allow me to be honest with myself, right? And some of you guys who have watched me for a while and you've seen me go and you've gone to my talks, you know that I have the story of when I was in high school, I was one person, right? Then when I went to college and I looked around and realized that I had no responsibility to be the person who I said I was the day before, I was able to assess my identity. I was able to assess who I was. And I was able to say, you know what? I can recreate myself. I can be a completely new and different person, right? Because I was able to sort of, without worrying about other people, have a conversation with myself about who I was, right? And so, towards the end of my relationship, I really realized that I needed to have that again. There are so many reasons why me and him are not together. And I know that a lot of you guys loved him and thought he was great. And he was great. And I want to make it really clear that Beardy is amazing. Beardy never treated me wrong. Beardy never did anything terrible. We had our issues here and there, but he's a good person. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I still love him. I still love him, probably will for a long time. I was with him for 5 years. I love him, still care about him. And honestly, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this video, I wish I could talk to him about. Because that was part of the problem, was he has his own issues that made it so that when I wanted to communicate with him, it was impossible. If you've followed me on Patreon, you probably know more in depth about that, because I've talked a little bit about that on Patreon, especially when a lot of the stuff was going on. But he has his own issues that made just having a conversation about what was going on and who we were and how we felt was virtually impossible. And so that made me feel a certain way, right? And so I made the decision to break up with him. It was a really hard decision because I realized that, for me, I thought I was going to get married, I thought that I would be doing this move to LA. You guys can see that the background's different because I'm living now in, a different apartment. I envisioned moving here with a partner. I envisioned moving here with him. I envisioned both of our careers flourishing after we made this move. I envisioned us getting married. I envisioned us having kids. I envisioned us having this idealistic, perfect, happy life together, because we were just so, I don't want to get emotional, but we were so good together. But he has his issues. I have my issues. And if I was being honest, I needed to be alone right now. And so, moving out to LA has been really interesting because I've never been more alone in my entire life, right? When I went away to college, I had the ability to sort of sit there and, feel that I was in a new place and feel that I was alone in a lot of ways. But I had classmates. I had people that I'd known, for years before, that I was connected, through forums and stuff, who I'm now seeing in person. And, so I had friends, and, even though, I was going through a change in who I was, it was definitely, I definitely had people around me who were supportive, right? moving out here, especially when you never envision yourself being here and doing this and being this way, it was really hard. I'm gonna be honest and say that there were a lot of nights where I cried. You guys know that I'm not super close to my family. I was just alone. I was alone. I moved in December, so Christmas was spent alone. I had one sad wrapped Christmas present from my ex. And I had a picture that he gave me of him and his friends at Christmas because he wanted me to not be alone. He was really concerned with me being alone at Christmas. And it was hard. It was really, really, really hard. But in a lot of situations, just like a lot of situations, it's allowed me to really reassess who I am, what's going on, and where I stand. And so I started thinking about dating again. I started thinking about getting back out there. I know after a 5-year relationship, I'm nowhere near ready for, a super, super serious long-term relationship. I'm just not. I'm not emotionally available. And also, I want to be alone. Part of the reason why I broke up with him was because I knew I needed to be alone. I knew I needed to figure myself out. I knew that I needed the space to explore without worrying about how my exploration was hurting my partner, right? So, that being said, I started going out on dates, right? And, having a lot of conversations with people and being very honest about the way that I felt about relationships and dating and monogamy, I realized that I was, wow, I'm like having a hard time like saying this because I feel like, and you can, there's a reason why I'm making a coming out video because this is a thing I'm like really afraid of expressing, but want to express. And when you come out, you have the ability to sort of feel a sense of freedom rush over you once you say it and once it's out there. Of course, you put it out there like this and you're bound to get attacked, you're bound to get stuff. But at the end of the day, being able to say it out loud is powerful. And what I realized about myself is that I am polyamorous. And I'm going to go through how I got to that conclusion. But for those of you guys who don't understand what polyamory, it's, there's poly and then there's amory. It's basically the idea that you can be in love with several people at once. You can be in love with, have partners with several people at once. Now, polyamory means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? For some people, polyamory means I have my wife and we see each other together and sometimes separately, and that's how it goes, right? For some people, polyamory is I have, partner here, a partner there, a partner there, and we all see each other, and that's just how it is, right? For some people, polyamory is I, have several husbands and they all date me, right? It's so different for so many different people. And for me, when it comes to polyamory, I am still figuring a lot of it out. And everyone is. One thing you learn when you start talking to other polyamorous people is that everyone is figuring it out. There's no one who's really figured it out. There are people who have it figured out for them, or figured out what works for them rather. But then there's people who they're still figuring it out. It's not perfect. But I wanted to kind of go over like how I got to this conclusion, and then kind of go over a little bit of what people think polyamory is, or why I specifically would be polyamorous, and kind of dispel some of those things. So here's the thing. When I was 21, right? 21-year-old Kat Black was, she was definitely in a space where she had kind of given up on the idea that she could be in a relationship, right? 21-year-old Kat Black knew she was cute, went out with men and expected them to pay for everything. Didn't, and sometimes because she thought that's what she could do, but also because sometimes she just wanted to be able to get out of the house and, wanted some food that wasn't what her parents were cooking, right? Like, that was really how I thought. And some of y'all remember when I was back then. But like, I didn't have much going for me. So I have like a little bit of a cold. This is really. I didn't really have much going for me, but I also was not really invested in having any type of relationship, right? Um, and so I was dating around a lot, right? And then, like, at the head of me doing that, I met my ex, right? And I met him and thought he was really handsome and really cool and, like, wanted to be with him. And back then, I had never been in a relationship. I had dated a lot. I had had men who were interested in dating me, but it didn't line up. I had a lot of people in and out of my life, people who were interested, but then had this and that happen. I've had all of these things that have gotten close to a relationship, but never had quite, which is part of why I had so much like bitterness when I was dating out of college, because I was just so much like, these guys are gonna, never treat me right and never, I just had such a pessimistic perspective of it, right? And then I met him and all I wanted was monogamy. All I wanted was to be super, super, super monogamous with him, to never be with anyone else, to the point where I was offended when people flirted with me. I was offended when people hit on me online and stuff. Like, I would get so offended, and I would be like, I've got my man, I've got my man. In fact, I even made a video, some of you guys might remember it, about, way back when, I think my boyfriend was actually in it, where I talked about my feelings about polyamory. And I kind of said, you know what, it's a great thing for other people, but it doesn't really work for me, right? I like my monogamous relationship. And I even got really on people's case about, polyamorous people who stick back their finger at you and say, monogamy is a lie and this and this and that. I had a lot of positions, and those were all very real and very true for, where I was at the time. But the truth of the matter was that I was still sorting through a lot of my feelings about monogamy because I'd never experienced it. I had never been in a monogamous relationship. For context, growing up, when I was younger than 21 and I started dating, a lot of the men who were speaking to me were married or were attached, and I had so many experiences of men, selling me the story that they, in the most perfect world, would date me, would treat me right, would da-da-da-da-da, right? But would never really have that capacity. So when I met a man who wanted to claim me, when I met a man who wanted to be monogamous with me, it was so different from what I was getting at the time. I didn't even feel like I was worth that, right? I didn't even feel like I was worth commitment, right? I had such a low self-esteem back then. That I was maybe shrouding in a little bit of fake confidence that, like, I think I really was sort of settling for stuff. And then I met this guy who was handsome, and, the second date we went on, I was introduced to his best friend, and then I went over for his family, and just, it was so fast. And it was something I thought I could never have. And I had it. And I was happy for a really long time. But, when I was 21, my world was so small, right? And through our relationship, because I didn't really have much of an ability after college to socialize. My parents had moved away from everyone I used to know. My friends and family were all, not friends and family, my friends were all in LA, and I was living in San Dimas, which is fairly far from LA. I just had so many situations that made it so that it was nearly impossible for me to really have much of a social life. And then I jumped into this monogamous relationship with someone, right? And so early on, I still felt that desire to connect with someone. And I thought that someone other than him. And I thought that that was, my, like, lack of friends, right? I thought that's what it was, right? And that's why I thought that's what it was for years, because, really what ended up happening is I moved in with him in Orange County, which moved me even further away from my friends and family, right? Then I absolutely knew no one, and I worked from home, and so I was, like, at home all day, and, like, I had sort of walked away from the social group I had online because it became very toxic. Some of you guys might remember those days, too. And so I honestly just for a while thought, well, I need to make friends, I need to have friends, right? And so then, my career starts taking off. And I start traveling. And then that becomes an issue in our relationship, right? And I had thought in the back of my head, it wouldn't really bother me if he had someone who he was spending time with, who he, was doing stuff with, because I loved him that much. Because I knew that him having that wouldn't contradict what we had, right? And I had that thought for a while, and I didn't quite know what that was, right? Now, for reference, funny story. So, I actually have it. I'm gonna grab it. So, when I was in college, right, I had a suite mate who was overhearing me talk about all the dates I was going on, right? He'd always hear me talk, bitch and moan, and, always see me going out. And he decided to let me borrow this book. And this book was called The Ethical Slut. And in college, I was so conservative, especially when I met him. This was my sophomore year. Junior year, actually. I mean, I was still pretty conservative through college. But I was pretty conservative. And so the idea of him handing me a book that said slut on it, I was just like, I was offended. I was like, why would you give this to me? Why would you think this about me? I didn't even read it, right? And he'd kind of explained to me that it was about polyamory, but I was just so offended by the concept that, in and of itself, that I just couldn't hear anything he was saying, right? I kept the book for years, never read it, ended up throwing it away, I believe, which is why I now have a repurchased, recently published version of it, right? But anyway, so I had people throughout my life, even when I was younger, even before I met my ex, constantly kind of suggest to me that I might be polyamorous. But I didn't believe it. All I was focused on was finding this guy who I could be monogamous with, right? That was all I could think about. And so then I found it, and then years through it, I started to think about how little it would bother me if he was with other people. Now, I will say, early on in our relationship, I did have moments in my life. I did have a lot of moments of insecurity. I was really paranoid early on, about him being with other people, right? And that was never the case. A lot of that was conspiracy theories going on in my head. I mean, I'd never been in a situation where a man had wanted to be monogamous with me, and so that made me just go really overboard with a lot of stuff, and I just, I was very insecure, right? And it's funny because if you have ever watched me doing an art broadcast or, some of the broadcasts where I'm just working on stuff, that I watch a lot of War of the Roses, which is a show where basically if you think your spouse is cheating, you call them up and try to trick them into sending roses to another person to prove that they're cheating. I watch a lot of Maury and cheating things. I watch a lot of stuff about cheating, and I always have, and always been fascinated with it. And I think when I've watched that stuff, I kind of started to see, it's when you watch that stuff sometimes, you understand why the person's upset, right? You understand why the person is upset that the person that they're with cheated on them or might be cheating on them, right? But when you really look at it, really look at it, and this is my opinion, this is just my opinion, just things I'm thinking about. The big issue there is communication, right? The big issue there is there's a secret you're keeping, you're including another person that isn't me, which is placing me in a situation where I'm in danger, and you're not talking to me about why you would get to that point where you would want to do that with another person, right? And I started to sort of see and realize that monogamy in that context is so, it has roots in insecurity. It has roots in not being confident about the relationship you have with the other person, right? And I'm not saying that that's irrational or wrong or weird or whatever, but I think in my last relationship, I felt a degree of comfort with him, knowing that if he had been with another person, that would never change our relationship. that would never change our love for each other, because we had had these years of growing together, these years of fighting together, these years of going through all types of scary stuff together and surviving with each other. And I knew that that is not diminished by him being with another person. Now, my ex, for those of you guys who are curious or wondering about this, he is incredibly monogamous. Incredibly. So would have never done that, right? Would have never done that. You know, that's him, you know? But I still had those thoughts in my head about how that wouldn't bother me, and how he had, because one of the issues we had in our relationship, I'm not going to get too deep into a lot of stuff, but he has his set of very niche likes and interests, and I think they're all really cool, but you know, I'm not nearly as nerdy as he is, right? I mean, I'm kind of a nerd, but I'm not nearly as nerdy as he is, right? And so all I could keep thinking to myself is how happy he would be if he had someone who was like really into that stuff. And he would always say, no, 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 I love you, I want you, da 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 da, which is true, I knew that, you know, but I just kept thinking about that for him. And then, you know, a big issue that we had was that I spent so much time, and if you follow my Patreon for a while, you already know this, I spent a lot of our relationship converging to his interests, converging to things that he liked and enjoyed, and he didn't really do a lot of that with me. And so I was left in a lot of situations where I was just sitting around questioning, you know, like I couldn't do certain things, right? I stopped thrifting because he hated going to thrift stores with me, right? I stopped doing a lot of stuff. Throughout our entire relationship, I really wanted to go to Ren Fair. He thought Ren Fair was just silly as hell, and like, that killed me. It just killed me that I was with someone who wasn't willing to do stuff. Of course, I wanted to do these things with him. I wanted to do them with a person that I loved, but he just wasn't open to that, right? And so, of course, that got me thinking of, like, how cool would it be if I had a person who would do stuff like that with me, you know? And so, one of the many reasons why I ended our relationship, and I wish, I've been trying to have a conversation with him about this for a while, but it's just probably not going to happen. I don't want to get into his issues, but he's shutting a lot of people out right now. But, you know, I would have loved to talk to him about a lot of this stuff, because I just realized and knew that I loved him more than anything in this world. And that whether he was with other people or I was with other people, that wouldn't change how we felt about each other. It just wouldn't. It just wouldn't, you know? And I know there's a lot of people, especially people who are monogamous, who are listening to this and thinking this is just the most bizarre thing, but it's where I'm sitting, right? It's where I'm sitting. And I realized that if I do fall in love again, right, with another person, which I don't think is off the table, if I do fall in love again with a person, I want to be able to not have them feel like they are trapped with me, that they can't experience certain things because they're with me. I don't think that's healthy. And I think that a lot of relationships fail because of that. You know, there's a lot of things that I am completely inflexible about. I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's a lot of things where it's like, I will just never do this, right? And if I had a partner who really wanted to do this, I wouldn't want them to feel trapped because they were with me, and because they were with me, they just had to accept that they couldn't do this. And me and him would have conversations about certain things like that. And when I would go over some of the stuff that I was interested in doing, which we won't get into detail, he would just sort of say, like, I was being gluttonous and I was being selfish and I was, you know, and he would go on about how not everyone gets to do what they want to do and this and this and that. And it was just a thing where I would very clearly explain, this is the thing that I like and we can do it together. And he would not want that, because what I would describe to him, I'm trying to be very vague intentionally, was so shocking and upsetting to him that, like, he just didn't want it. He just didn't want to do it. And that hurt. That really, really hurt. So anyway, I had to, for my own happiness, and honestly for him, I had to end it, and it was a really hard decision because, again, I had not imagined my future without him. When I sat down and thought about where I would be in 5 years, there was no doubt in my mind that he would be right there, right? There is no doubt in my mind that he would be right there. But I had to be real and say, this is what makes me happy. And I can't be happy when I'm in a relationship where I can't have full access to who I am. I will say that a big part of our relationship going the way it was lack of communication. We did not communicate at all in the way we should have communicated. And so out of a relationship, now my biggest focus is being able to communicate, being able to have a conversation with the people who I'm dating. And dating poly people, that's kind of how it goes. I mean, the people I'm currently seeing, they all overshare. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know everything. But I'm glad that I do, because we have realistic understandings of what our relationships are, because we are communicating. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to kind of go through all this. Now, there are some people, right? And I've dealt with this because on all of my dating profiles, I make it super, super clear that I am polyamorous and that I'm currently seeing a couple people. And that if there's ever a situation where we're going to continue dating, you just kind of have to be aware of that. You just kind of have to be aware that that is how things are, right? And I will say, being black or being trans, being, 5'10", curvy, successful, and polyamorous does definitely, and straight, definitely, makes my dating pool a little bit smaller. But personally, I'm kind of okay with that, right? But a lot of the conversations I've had with men, when they read that I'm poly on my profile, a lot of them, they think that it means we're having threesomes all the time. They think that it means that I'm just fucking everyone. That, I'm just having so much sex. And that is just really not the case. I'm actually reading a book called... Where did I put the book? Do I have it up here? Let me see if I can find the book. All right, so I'm reading this book called More Than Two, and actually one of the first things it kind of goes over is a lot of the perceptions of polyamory. And one of the things that it says that I remember, it's such a really good quote. It's some people get into polyamory to have more sex. Some people get into polyamory to have less sex, right? And some people are in polyamorous relationships that are not sexual at all, right? One thing I will say that I am specifically very invested in out of my relationship is my sexual happiness, right? And what that really has meant for me has been, I am investing in aids that have made it so that when I am in the mood, I don't, make a mistake, so to speak. And honestly, for me, that has been super empowering because, I don't know, when I was younger, sex for me, well, I'm not gonna go over a lot of stuff because I've been through a lot of shit, I've been through a lot of trauma, I've been through a lot of abuse, and so sex and what sex has meant for me has changed quite a bit through time. Sex began for me as a tool that I was using to get the things that I wanted, right? Not going to get too deep into that. Maybe I'll make a video about that later. But that's where sex started for me. It didn't start from a place of I want to have pleasure. It came from a place from I need to survive and I need to sort of do things, you know, get certain things. So let me do this thing so that I can get it. Right. I viewed sex as like my only ability or resource. A whole nother video. Right? Then sex in college especially became a thing I did for validation. I wanted to be validated specifically as a woman so that, you know, I felt like, you know, if men fuck me, that really means something. It doesn't. You know, you learn with time, men will fuck almost anything. But, you know, so what sex has meant for me, it was a tool, then it became, you know, a validation thing, and then it became a thing I did for love, right? I did for love, which in a lot of ways was an obligation. And without getting into too much detail, I had one specific type of sex for a really long time in my relationship. Had fun, it was great, whatever. But out of a relationship now, I'm like, well, I can do new things, right? I can try more stuff, you know? I can try to do non-sexual things that will feed into sex, right? I'm trying to be so vague. I'll probably at one point talk about this shit because y'all know me. I can't keep anything to myself. But, you know, I started to become very invested in what makes me happy sexually. And right now at 27 years old, I'm not looking to have sex for a tool. I'm not looking to have sex for, you know, validation. And at this point, I'm not having sex for love, you know? But for me right now, sex is so incredibly mental. Sex is so incredibly non-sexual, honestly. Like, I mean, it is sexual, but what I'm trying to say is the way I get there, if I'm going to have sex with someone, there's going to be a lot of things before that make it so that that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm not going to get into this, but I've made mistakes since I've been out of my relationship. I've slept with people who said they were poly, who turned out to be monogamous. That's a whole conversation I'm probably going to have later on this channel, but you know, so it's like I've made mistakes. And every time where I've been in a situation where I've dated a person who I thought was poly, and then we had sex, and then they turned out to be monogamous, it hurt. Because sex is not something I do lightly. You know? I don't need to tell you guys this, but I'll tell it right now. Currently, I'm dating 4 men. I'm only sleeping with one of them. And that one guy, that one guy is someone who, he really helped me through a lot of the stuff I was going through out of my relationship. And we didn't have sex for a whole month when we first started seeing each other. But when we have sex now, it is quality. It's you know what? It's the best sex I've had in my life, right? But it's sex that has come from him really getting to know me and understand me and get what makes me tick, and me doing the same, right? It's sex that comes from an emotional and romantic investment, right? And so it's one of those things where I honestly have been enjoying the quality over quantity aspect of sex. I'm hot. I can get laid where the fuck I want. I'm just going to put that out there right now. But, you know, that's not what it's about for me anymore. It's not about having sex to have sex. For me, sex has to mean something. And so, while yes, I may be polyamorous and I may be seeing a bunch of people and I may really want to have sex with half of those people, you know who you are, I'm not having sex with everyone. And when you're poly and you're dating other poly people, you have to be very careful with that, because it's not just who you're sleeping with, it's also how you sleeping with them could affect their other partners. And so, at least in my experience, poly people are very careful about sex and how they have sex and who they have sex with and why they're having sex with them. So there's that. So for me, I'm not in poly because I want sex all the time. I am definitely having less sex right now because of the way that I view relationships and the way that I view, dating and stuff. That's 100% the case. Because there's a lot of men out there who are interested, but there's a lot of men out there who are not poly and aren't looking to date and da 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 blah 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 blah. So yeah. But anyway, another kind of misconception thing. Some people might listen to me say that I'm polyamorous and think, well, that's because you can't find anyone who can commit to you or something like that. I just got out of a 5-year relationship with a man who committed to me, right? Who not only that, but we were in love. I still love him. I'm sure he still loves me, right? I know. I mean, when you're someone like me who's in a situation where you're black, you're trans, you're, curvy, whatever, those are all things that you're sort of told by society are not desirable. It's very easy to sort of sit yourself in a position where you feel like, I'm never going to find anyone else. I'm never going to find another relationship. I'm never going to fall back in love. This is never going to happen to me. I'm never going to find anyone to me. But the way that I personally feel about that is it's possible. It's going to happen again. It took me a really long time to find him. It's probably going to take me a really long time for me to find another person. Maybe one of the people I'm dating right now, maybe I will eventually reach a point where we do love each other, right? But, I'm not rushing into that. I'm really not rushing into that. But I wanted to say that just because people are polyamorous does not mean they don't have commitment to each other. I'm currently dating a man who is married, actually. I met his wife. I'm going to probably see them tonight. I'm about to go out partying, whatever. But I met his wife. They're really, really, really cool. And they have a situation where he's got his girlfriends. She's got her boyfriends. They have these, cool little, poly barbecues with people. And everyone loves each other, right? I mean, it's a thing that it's very hard for some people to wrap their mind around. But it's a really healthy, fully communicated situation, and I love that about this particular person who I'm dating. They have a commitment to each other. They don't only have a commitment to each other, but they have a commitment to their children, right? And so there is commitment there. It's not, poly is not this thing where you just free for all, everyone's fucking, there's no, commitment at all. People are very much committed to each other. And honestly, being poly, you're already dealing with being an outlier, right? And because of that, because a lot of people don't want to date monogamous people. That's most people you're going to talk to. Most people you're going to talk to are monogamous, right? And so it's very common for poly people who really like each other to be like, you know what, we're going to commit. We're going to be more committed because we like each other, we enjoy each other, and we want that commitment. But that commitment does not mean that they aren't seeing other people. I think some people get that so mixed up, right? They get so mixed up that commitment means you can only see this one person and that is a commitment, right? I don't see commitment that way anymore. I used to, I don't anymore. And honestly, not seeing it that way is it's lifted a lot of weight off of my shoulders, to be completely honest with you, because it's a lot understanding that people can be with other people and still love you and care for you and want to be with you has really changed my perspective on a lot of stuff. Going back to the point I was making earlier about respectability. So one of the things that's made me very careful about talking about this is I know that, because here's the thing, all right? I'm very aware of the fact that my career has taken off a certain way because I have a very respectable image. I mean, it's become a little less of that because I've been a little bit more bold or whatever, but I have a very respectable image. I speak a certain way, I look a certain way, I talk to people a certain way, and despite being a black trans person, I make people feel very comfortable. I make people feel very at ease, right? I don't really challenge their preconceived notions of really anything other than what trans people look like, right? And so being poly, which is already, like I said, framed in this hypersexual context, and then being open about it, it's scary because I'm already sensing how many people are gonna say, well, shit, of course of course you're poly, you're, a dirty, tranny who fucks a bunch of people. I mean, there's a lot of people who really think that trans women exist exclusively for the use of sex, right? And so I deal with that as a trans woman. I definitely deal with it as a black woman, right? And there is a whole other conversation that I'm sure I'm going to have with you guys plenty of times on this channel about being a black woman who is poly. Like, me being trans, I honestly feel is way less of kind of an issue than me being a black woman. Being a black poly woman, black women specifically are framed as hypersexual, right? I am a black trans woman. That makes it double fold. I'm dealing with people who have never dated black women before, and I'm dealing with people who have never dated trans women before. That's a whole other conversation. Some of y'all are going to, I'm not even going to get into that because there's a whole debate there, right? Because I have a lot to say about being black and dating and, shit I've ran into. Because now I'm single and I've been dating for a while. I want to make this clear too. I've been broken up with my ex for a while now. It's been quite some time. Like, we're almost coming up on a year. It's been a while. So, I just want to make it clear to you guys that there's been time and this is not like a new thing. So when I talk about dating, it's because I've been dating for a while, dating for quite some time. And so there's been ups and downs, right? So I have a lot to say. But yeah, coming out to you guys has been really scary for me. Because I do worry about what that image is, I really want it to be such a perfect, ideal, cis-normative image. Like, let's just cut to the fucking chase. A cis-normative, respectable image. And that is me. I want to make it very clear that I am still very respectable. I am still very naturally, a lot of things people would say is like, oh, this is just so vanilla and respectable, right? But one of the things I learned from my last relationship, going how it went, was that I am not vanilla. I'm not vanilla. I'm a little bit edgier than I had thought I was, because a lot of my past relationship was me pretending that I never experienced certain things, right? I'm not going to get too deep into this, but there's a lot of stuff sexually, I guess you could say, that I have experienced throughout my life that I tried to sort of seem, not that I was like hiding it, but it was just, making it less of an apparent thing. And that made my last relationship, it's kind of dishonest. There's a story I could tell early on in our relationship, but I'll tell that in a different video. But long story short, I was really trying to be more reserved and more vanilla, and I really am not that at all. I'm still pretty reserved, but I'm not very vanilla. Well, actually, in comparison to some people, I'm very vanilla. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm not this cookie cutter, cutesy wootsy, botootsie image that I had sort of cultivated over the years online, right? And so what you guys are going to see from me, honestly, in the next couple of years, probably, is I am now a single woman living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles, and this has been my dream forever. I've wanted to live in LA for a really, really long time, and I'm finally starting to feel part of a community. And I've never really felt that before. I'm in a lot of very niche scenes in Los Angeles. A lot of very niche scenes in Los Angeles. And so some of you guys have actually seen me out and about at different clubs and stuff, and you've been like, oh my god, I can't believe you're here, Kat. I'm like, yep, I'm here. And so shout out to all the people who have said hi to me. But I'm making a lot of friends in different scenes, and a lot of my scenes intersect with each other. I don't know how deep I'm going to ever get to telling you guys about all that stuff. Especially because I don't want to be stalked. If anything, I don't want y'all to stalk me, because the scenes I'm part of out here, they are very small and very niche, like I said. And so I've already ran into, like, every time I go out, every time I go to anything, I always see someone who recognizes me. And if you are those people and you do see me at these clubs or at these events, like, please don't make a big deal about me being there. Please don't. I really don't want that to be the case. Not because I'm ashamed or whatever, but it's just like first of all, I'm never a huge fan about people fangirling over me. It's weird. I mean, it's not weird, but it's like, especially if I'm in it. Like, girl, not to get too detailed, but there's been times where I have been dressed very specifically, and I've been standing there, titties out, and someone's like freaking out about my YouTube channel, and I'm just like, I appreciate it, but also, can we not do this here? Anyway, you can still, I'm still unpacking a lot of stuff, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I don't think I'm going to ever move into the position of speaking about polyamory and like a pro, context. That's just probably not going to be me. It's a thing I'm still figuring out. It's a thing I'm still investigating. There's a lot about dating, sex, relationships, romance. I'm still figuring out, and I wanted to talk about this, because I don't want to have to keep going back to like explain like why I'm dating more than one person. And I also don't want to have to dance around it. I don't want to dance around that. It's my life. It's part of me. I talk about my life all the time. And as you guys know, like my mama used to always tell me, that I couldn't hold hot water, which is a saying for like I can't keep things inside. Like, I'm always sharing, and that's just me. That's just who I am, and that's how it's gonna be. So I wanted to share that with you guys, but I also wanted to share because this channel is going to always be about my personal growth and the things I'm experiencing and the things that I'm doing and what I'm going through, because that was why I started to fall in love with YouTube. That is why I started my own YouTube channel, was because I really liked to be able to share where I am in life and what's going on and the lessons I'm learning and reflecting and sharing and growing with my audience. I do not like, I like doing what I'm doing on my main channel, but I want people to never lose sight of the fact that I am still a person who is figuring out who the fuck they are. I'm 27 years old. I'm still very young. Not as young as I used to be, but I'm still very young. And there's a lot of stuff I'm still unpacking. There's a lot of things I'm still navigating around, and I don't want you guys to ever think that I don't have those journeys too. And honestly, like being out of this relationship, moving out here, like it has forced me to really re-examine who I am when the lights are off, right? Who am I when the lights are off? And so I already feel myself becoming more of me, more of who I am, right? More of who I truly am. Not who I am being filtered through a layer of social media or a layer of a relationship or a layer of expectations that are placed onto me because of this, and that. I'm really becoming more of myself. And I miss having a dialogue with myself. I missed loving who I am truly and not who I am projecting, right? So anyway, this was a pretty hard video for me to make, and it's really long. You guys are just going to have to get over that because that's just how this channel is going to be. But honestly, I have so much to share with you guys. I have so much to share, and I really hope you guys can, learn, share, and grow with me on this channel. So anyway, I feel like I've said basically everything. I'm sure that I will come back more with conversations about polyamory, but I want to make it clear that I'm not ever going to be sitting at the position of an expert because I don't know. I'm still figuring it out myself, so yeah. Anyway, on that note, I will talk to you guys later, and I want you guys to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye!